Okay, in this podcast, I'm going to take a look at political culture and the importance of the concept in analyses in comparative politics. So we'll introduce the concept, then we'll look at Inglehart's article on the renaissance of political culture, and also Weber's cultural explanation for economic growth in the early 20th century as a result of a cultural value called the Protestant ethic. And then we'll look at, if we have time, we'll look at an article that tests rational choice accounts of versus political cultural accounts in Whitefield and Evans' article on differences between political attitudes in Slovakia and the Czech Republic. Okay, so first of all, take a look at this. I wanted to start off by having you take a look at this image, at this picture, at this graph, I guess. This is, they say an image is worth 1,000 words. So right now, pause this podcast, and tell me what words come to mind when you look at this image. What is the sort of the take-home message of this image? Okay, so you can do that right now. Okay, so you're back. Hopefully, you've thought about this. And what this shows actually is a tremendous level of geographical clustering of countries on the basis of a couple of important cultural values. So on the y-axis, what we see is a scale that goes from 2 to -2 based on whether the individuals in that country are at the mean more traditional in their approach to political and social life, or more secular rational in that approach. And on the x-axis, we have a second sort of cultural dimension, which is those who value survival or economic values more, and those who value sort of self-expressive or what are called sort of post-materialist values. And what we find is, as I said, this astonishing level of sort of geographical clustering, with English-speaking countries occupying this region here, African countries down here, South Asian countries here, ex-communist countries for the most part here. This dark red line encompasses all the ex-communist countries. There are a couple of outliers. Greece is here, and then Israel as well. But here's Protestant Europe. But on the whole, though, there's, as I said, this tremendous level of geographical clustering. Okay, so and according to Inglehart, these cultural differences amongst countries and cultural similarities amongst countries with underlying sort of deeply held cultural beliefs like religion and language are persistent over time, and they endure. Okay. So I won't talk about this, but just the idea that we'll be concerned with political culture. What is it? Well, you read that in the chapter, so I won't go into it. But why is political culture important? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, it's a strong challenger to rational choice theory, a view of how individuals make decisions. If you remember from your reading on rational choice, decisions are made on the basis of combining preferences and beliefs to select the behavior or the instrument that will maximize an individual's expected utility. And the implicit and actually explicit assumptions on the part of those who are rational, who analyze comparative politics from a rational choice perspective, is that individuals all over the world act in the same manner with respect to their decision making. Those who take a political cultural view argue that in fact individuals don't act in the same manner throughout the world. Some individuals in some cultures maybe act to maximize their levels of expected utility. Individuals in other cultures do not. So it all depends on political culture. The other important thing about political culture is that it is relatively enduring, right? Political cultures, and particularly political cultures that are national in orientation, are relatively enduring. They don't change much over time, and as a result, they can help explain political outcomes. In other words, we can use political culture as an independent or an explanatory variable. Okay, can you think of an example? One example was the article by Alesina and his co-author, whose name escapes me for the moment, but which looks at sort of deeply embedded cultural values related to the family and ideas about the family, and how these can help explain economic outcomes across countries in the world. Okay. Another important use of culture is in the sort of whole democracy and democratization debate. And some argue that there's something called a culture of democracy, or what's called a civic culture, and there's this idea that, or this belief among some, that some cultural systems are inherently incompatible with democracy. Okay, we're going to talk a lot about that over the next couple of weeks. So I'll leave that aside for now. Okay, let's just look at Engelhardt. So Engelhardt, once again, he shows that there are enduring cross-national differences in life satisfaction and interpersonal trust. This is in his article, The Renaissance of Political Culture. But that's only the sort of the beginning, right? So once he shows these, he then shows that these are correlated with economic and other outcomes. Okay. Now, let's have a look. So here's his example. Figure 1: cross-national differences in levels of satisfaction with life. So this is an enduring cultural value, and what he shows is that in this period between 73 and 87, across very, very many countries, right, we see this level of stability in terms of the relative ordering amongst countries. So Denmark and the Netherlands, for the most part, are always near the top, as is Ireland, whereas Germany, France, and Italy are always near the bottom, as is Greece. Okay, the only country that sort of has changed over time is Belgium. Dropping precipitously, between 79, I guess, and 83, and then coming up a bit. Maybe their soccer team wasn't doing very well during that time or something, I don't know. But anyways, otherwise, there's a tremendous uniformity, and the relative ordering remains relatively stable over this, almost, 14-year period. Okay. So now what he then shows is that this level of mass satisfaction, life satisfaction, correlates quite highly with levels of economic well-being, gross national product. And the R, which is the coefficient of correlation, is 0.67, which means that R squared is 2/3, so 49, so about 40.44. And so we have a strong positive relationship between the two. Okay, so here he's sort of using life satisfaction as a cultural value as sort of an explanatory variable, and he actually goes on later in the article to actually through statistical analysis to show that in fact that there's a causal relationship between the two. And if we look at the second sort of important cultural value, interpersonal trust, we notice similar findings to levels of life satisfaction. Some countries are very high and continue to be high. Other countries are much lower. Okay, and once again we see the relationship between interpersonal trust and economic development. We see also a positive relationship, not as strong. The R isn't as high as it was in the previous example, but still fairly high. Okay, so now Engelhardt argues that shows that Weber's argument about the rise of capitalism and rapid economic development is a cultural argument. Okay, Weber argues that it was really a set of cultural changes that were related to the emergence of Calvinist Protestantism that led to economic development. Right, so it's not about institutional changes that created sort of incentives, right, as rational choice theorists would argue. It's not about structural changes. It's not about sort of changes in geographical destiny or things like that, right? It's really about changes in cultural attitudes and cultural values, right? And he goes through what it was that specifically about Calvinist Protestantism, right, that led to the rise of economic growth, capitalism, and economic growth, right? And it was this idea that Calvinist Protestantism, distinct from Catholicism, right, viewed the accumulation of wealth for its own sake as a sign of divine grace. So it made people then encourage an aesthetic of self-control, which is conducive to accumulation of wealth. Okay, so this is the argument right here in a nutshell. Okay, so all right.